Hello, Seat and Stingers. It's Miss Jenka from the library. Wishing you a happy Hispanic Heritage Month, and I'm glad we're celebrating. In the story today, I'm going to read a book about uh, comedias in El Salvador. It's called The Fiesta of the Tortillas. I'm going to tell you a story that is full of magic and flavor. When it happened, I was 8 years old with black hair, black eyes, and brown skin like the color of Mother Earth, and I was called Coqui, not Jorge. Coqui was also the name of my talkative little parrot that was green like the color of the hills, with the pockets of my shorts full of rubber bands, rocks, marbles, tops, slingshots, seeds, and any other thing I could play with. I ran barefoot and shirtless from here to there all day long, skipping in the rain, flying kites, climbing trees, and playing hide and seek. I was lucky to live in a house full of so much magic and so many flavors. For in my house we had a comedor, which is what restaurants are called in El Salvador, and in this comedor all my aunts and cousins worked. One morning at dawn, when my Aunt Toya was still in bed, she heard the sound of rhythmic clapping coming from the kitchen of the comedor. Who could have gotten up so early to make tortillas? Who could be making tortillas so cheerfully, my aunt wondered. She jumped out of bed and went to the kitchen. But when she got there, she didn't see anyone. There was no fire in the hornya, and the comal was set aside next to the firewood where she left it every night. On the green table, the stacks of different colored plates looked like silent accordions. The pots, skillets, and ladles hung silently from the walls. Everything else was in its place too. The knives, forks, and spoons lay on a yellow plastic container. The cups and frying pans sat on the shelves. My aunt scratched her head and said, "Maybe I was dreaming." Puzzled, she went back to bed. Later that day, when everyone was awake, the delicious smell of tomatoes, onions, garlic, pepper, green chilies, and other vegetables and spices cooked on the comedor floating through the house. Aunt Toya seemed distracted as she watched the other aunts and cousins making tortillas around the comal. She listened carefully to see if she could pick out who made tortillas with the same rhythm that she had heard earlier this morning, but she couldn't do it. She was still puzzled. Aunt Rosa, who noticed she was acting a bit strange, asked her, "What's wrong with you, Toya? You look a little worried." "Rosa," Aunt Toya answered, "did you hear anything unusual this morning?" "Unusual? Like what?" Aunt Rosa asked, her eyes opening wide. "Well," said Aunt Toya, "very early this morning someone was making tortillas. I jumped up and ran to see who it was, but when I got to the kitchen, no one was there." "Ah," Aunt Rosa said, her eyes opening even wider, and Rosa looked so happy. Excitedly, she straightened her flowered apron and touched Aunt Toya's arm, exclaimed, "You heard it too? I thought I was the only one." Then, speaking very softly, she said, "I heard it once a few months ago. I never told anyone because I was afraid they'd say I was crazy." They both laughed with satisfaction. They were pleased to know they weren't crazy. "Okay, but who is it? Who could it have been?" they both said. They sat down at the table to try to figure out who could be the woman, man, spirit, or ghost that came early in the morning to make tortillas with such cheerful rhythm. The morning in the Comedor went as usual. It was full of wonderful smells and lots of people coming and going for breakfast. There were refried beans, eggs scrambled with sunny side up, casamiento with cheese, fried bananas with cream and beans, and of course were magical pupusas or reventas, filled with beans and cheese, and pupusas with chicharron or lorocoro, served with special garnish my aunts made from many different vegetables. It was all so tasty that people kept coming back for more. At lunchtime there was plenty of grilled beef and carne seca, beef that was dried in sun and salted. It is usually made with green chilies and tomatoes and served with beans, rice, and tortillas. On the side there were radishes, sliced tomatoes, and lime. There was also good hot soup made from chicken, beans, or pig's feet. Before they went to bed, Aunt Toya and Aunt Rosa made an agreement. "If you hear the clapping, wake me up, and if I hear it, I'll wake you up." At dawn the next morning, my cousin Sheila heard a rhythmic clapping that sent her running from her bed to the kitchen. The poor girl thought she had overslept, but to her surprise, when she got to the restaurant, no one was there. Everything was totally quiet. Sheila, whose hair was curly, swore she felt it straighten out from the fright. Goosebumps broke out all over her body, and she ran back to bed. When the sun came up, Sheila told Aunt Toya what had happened. My aunt surprised that she hadn't heard anything, but it also made her laugh. She thought for a minute and then said to Sheila, "This is so strange." So that Sheila wouldn't be scared, she said, "Do you know what, Mahita? Aunt Rosa and I have heard the same thing, but we decided not to tell anyone. We're going to try to catch the guilty one in the act. You must help us find out who it is." "Of course," Sheila said, and she smiled, feeling a little better. "So today, I want you to try to find out who makes tortillas with the same rhythm you heard this morning," added Aunt Toya. Sheila nodded her head and agreed not to say anything to anyone. That day the three of them were like detectives. They listened to the mysterious rhythm while the other women were making tortillas around the comal. The three of them kept a close watch on everything that had happened in the comedor. The whole day went by and they didn't hear anyone making tortillas with the rhythm they had heard early in the morning. Before they went to bed, they made the same agreement. "Whoever hears anything has to wake up the others," Aunt Toya said. Sheila and Rosa agreed. At dawn the next morning, my Aunt Julia heard a pleasant clapping, a brown sound like someone making tortillas. However, since Aunt Julia was very grumpy, she didn't think the sound coming from the comedor was pleasant. She got out of bed hopping mad. "Who could have gotten up so early to make tortillas?" she asked. She walked quickly to the kitchen to see who had woken her up. The floor of the house shook under her feet. "What rude person has the nerve to wake me up so early? I just went to bed." Then she got to the kitchen. No one was there. It was totally quiet and everything was in its place. "Who's trying to be funny?" asked Aunt Julia. After standing for a little while in front of the hornya, she went back to bed. She was madder than ever. Lying there, she thought, those lazy girls, Toya and Rosa, must have come up with this trick. Despite her anger at being awakened so early, Aunt Julia decided not to say anything. "I'm going to catch that rascal red-handed," she thought. She spent the whole day listening to the rhythm, trying hard to hear which of my aunts and cousins made tortillas with the same rhythmic clapping she had heard that morning. The good thing about all this is that it made my Aunt Julia see how hard my other aunts and cousins worked making tortillas and preparing food for the comedor. She saw them moving from one side of the comal to the other, avoiding the fires so they wouldn't get burned, flipping the tortillas, wrapping them in cloths to keep them nice and warm. She saw them pouring tomatoes and onions into pans full of oil. The smell of the comedor made its way into her heart. She saw them serving soft drinks in plastic cups where the ice played a refreshing little melody with each step they took. She saw them move along the customers like jugglers carrying plates of hot food, one in each hand. The rhythm of the comedor made its way into her heart too. Sundays in my house began on Saturday. On Saturdays, the corn husks and mesa for tamales were prepared. There was a sweet mesa and a salty one, everything made ready for the following morning. That night, Aunt Julia went to sleep thinking, "Tomorrow I am going to catch that joker who gets up and makes noise early in the morning." Aunt Toya and Aunt Rosa said to my cousin Sheila, "Keep your eyes open and wake us up if you hear anything." "Okay, and you wake me up if you hear anything," Sheila replied. At dawn the next morning, the dogs were barking and howling mysteriously. The cats meowed and ran around mysteriously too. Aunt Toya's parrot, Lorenza, woke up and started talking in her parrot language more excitedly than usual. "Toya! Toyita! Toya! Toyita!" She just wouldn't stop talking. Mixed with dogs barking, cats meowing, and the parrots chattering, a rhythmic clapping could be heard coming from the comedor. The first to get to the kitchen was my Aunt Julia, but when she arrived, no one was there. Then my Aunt Toya, my cousin Sheila, and my Aunt Rosa came in. Then my cousin Mercedes, my cousin Chiparina, and my cousin Inez appeared, followed by my Aunt Lydia and my cousin Nevia. All my aunts and cousins showed up. One by one, they formed a circle around the hornia as if making a huge tortilla. They looked each other up and down without saying a word. After a little while, Aunt Julia said very sternly, "Which of you is the prankster who has been getting up early and making all that noise that doesn't let me sleep in peace?" My aunts and cousins started pointing and blaming each other, maybe because they were all afraid of Aunt Julia. Suddenly, Aunt Julia clapped her hands to get their attention, creating a little song as if she were making tortillas. When she realized what she had done, she laughed. She hadn't laughed in years. Her hard, frowning face softened. She knew in her heart that she was becoming a little girl again. Everyone laughed with her. With tears running down her face, she said, "Mornings are for being joyful, like the spirit of the corn." And she began to sing a song they had all sung when they were girls. While she sang, she clapped out a happy rhythm. "Get ready, girl, get ready. Your soldier is coming along, dressed in that nice suit of clothes, singing a carpenter's song. Last night he was wearing a tulip for a hat, shaking his hips, patty, pat, pat, pat." Everyone knew the song, so they all sang it. They remembered playing hide and seek and climbing up mango and guava trees when they were children. They remembered swinging on swings and chasing after kites. My cousins were delighted, and suddenly they weren't afraid of Aunt Julia any more. Then Julia added, smiling, "We are all one big tortilla, one with the fiesta of the tortillas." And they all hugged each other. Then they put firewood on the hornya and lit the fire, and they set the comal on top and began to make tortillas, each with the rhythm of her own fiesta in her hands and in her heart. Many years have gone by since then, and in my house they still make the same dishes. My aunts' heads are all covered with gray hair like clouds or white streaks of lightning. Aunt Toya and Aunt Julia, who are now little old ladies, sit at the table making tamales and telling me, my cousins, and our children about those days when the spirit of the corn came to visit us. "Do you remember, Koki?" Aunt Toya and Aunt Julia ask. I look at them tenderly and nod yes as I think how good the spirit of the corn is. We still are one big tortilla. Here's a glossary of all the words I used today in Spanish and what they mean. We're going to put it on our website later. Thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your week.